umunsi mwiza w'umurimo ngira ngo byinshi byavuzwe sindi bubitindeho ariko uyu munsi waduhuje hano waduhaye amahirwe yo kugira ngo turebe ibyo tumaze kugeraho nk'igihugu ariko ibyo byose tumaze kugeraho nk'igihugu ni imbaraga zanyu mwese muri hano muri iki cyumba n'abadahari zatumye tugera ku byo dushobora kuba twageraho uyu munsi ariko mpereye kuri theme dufite uyu munsi ya job creation our shared priority ngira ngo twese turemeranya yuko job creation is not just a metric. We've heard from the different speakers, job creation being a pillar for inclusive growth, being a foundation for our ambitions to be a knowledge-based economy. Yet, I think in many ways, job creation is a lifeline for our people. Today, I was asked to talk about the future of work. And as we think about the future of work, what we see is that the future of work is shifting. Automation, AI, remote work, platform economies are rewriting the rules. When we look at the rapid technological change, we just talked about artificial intelligence, we're thinking about automation. All of this is changing how many jobs are performed and who performs them. We also have an advantage. Many of the speakers talked about the demographic or the young population that we have. In the developed world, you have an aging population. What we have, which is a benefit and an asset, a huge asset for us, is a burgeoning youth population that is entering into the labor market. But if we're not careful, there'll be a liability. And what we need to be doing is how do we pair them with the right skills and opportunities? The conversations we've had today, I'm hoping will be those that inspire us to think about what we do differently, what we do together to unlock quality jobs. I don't want to do so many statistics in my closing remarks, but I just wanted to paint a few. One being that globally, we're going to be creating at least 600 million new jobs to meet the growing population around the world, and many of these jobs are going to be in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. But the staggering reality we had about the 60% statistic, but this 60% statistic is also reflected on the global scene where 60% of the global workforce is involved in informal employment, and 70% of that is within sub-Saharan Africa. What that means is that it translates into lack of job security. It also creates more dependency on social protection. The Minister of Labor talked about the 250,000 jobs that we must create every year for us to be able to create jobs for the youth that is getting into the workforce. But I believe that these realities frame both the challenges and opportunities that the future of work holds. At the beginning, I talked a little bit about the trends. Automation, turavuga robots, turareba AI, ikoranabuhanga rigezweho, the gig economy, twavuze skills mismatch ihari kuri pano tugenda tubivuga. Ngira ngo icyo tugomba kurebera hamwe ni iyo impact ya automation, ya AI, y'ibyo byose kuri the future of work ihagaze gute. Mu bihugu biri more developed, icyo twabonye nuko as industries grow, the workforce is shifting from factories into services. But what we are currently seeing today is that AI is threatening even white-collar jobs. Sometimes when you do a bit of research and look at the statistics that are out there, they paint a different picture for the developing world, where the narrative is that there will be less severe impact because majority of our workers are in agriculture, are in the informal services, as well as us having a small manufacturing sector. But I think that's not something that we can be comfortable with, because the reality is that this has long-term implications that are consequential. Robots have been handling manual tasks, but today AI is handling cognitive tasks. and we must be prepared for that. 40% of jobs are going to be disrupted by AI, whether we like it or not. We had a conference this year that had the health sector, and a statement that was made that resonated with me and I think should resonate with everyone was around a doctor that uses AI will be much better off than a doctor that doesn't. So even in the different trades that we are in, we should be asking ourselves, how do I leverage these emerging technologies, because I'm going to be better off from someone in the same career who is not using these technologies. But when you also think about the impact, you also think about job displacement and complementarity. I've been asked this question so many times. AI is going to make us lose jobs. Granted, that's very correct. It's also going to create new jobs. But I think the question we should reflect on, and perhaps even beyond today's celebrations here in this room, is how do we use AI or leverage AI to complement these jobs? And I'll give you a simple case. If you're a farmer, AI will do a better job at detecting diseases for you. However, what we may be worried about is the call center work, where you had so many human beings that are employed in call centers. A farmer will call for advisory services, and this is going to be replaced by chatbots. But beyond being worried about it, I think the key question we should be doing together as stakeholders is figuring out how do we make sure that we are using AI to complement the different jobs that we have in our economy. We are going back to the education sector to reskill and upskill and change and make the necessary reforms in education so that we have a workforce that is fit for the future, as opposed to being worried and hiding from it. I want to wrap up with just a few things that came out from the different conversations, but mainly thinking about what we need to do differently. We've had a conversation here around the private sector is going to lead us in creating these jobs. But we need to know what the private sector needs to be able to lead us in getting those jobs. And that's the work that we can do as public sector, as the public sector, as development partners, in really making sure that each one of us understands their role in ensuring that all of these jobs meaningful jobs can be created. The first one is investing in both digital and physical infrastructure. We won't have jobs without connectivity. And by connectivity, I mean broadband, electricity, digital tools that are essential enablers, not just luxuries. We must prioritize digital access to all of these, digital access to all of these tools and platforms, especially rural areas. Expanding power and transport network, and I think this is work that is already happening in many ways across our government and across different industries. The question we must be asking ourselves is how do we double down on what we're already doing, and how do we ensure that we close the gap sooner than later. The second thing we need to do different is reforming education for the jobs of the future. We all know the vision statement we have about being a knowledge-based economy. But we can't be a knowledge-based economy with 20th century classrooms. And that's our collective responsibility, not something that we leave to Mineduc and the academic sector to do on their own. We must shift from rote learning to problem solving, digital literacy, soft skills. These are things that are going to be essential in the future of work. Communication, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, all of these are going to be essential skills as we think about the jobs for the future. Some of our speakers earlier and panelists also talked about promoting lifelong learning through different training programs. I think this week I shared with the Minister of Labour, there was a tweet asking her why she had said skills over education. And I think it's not one or the other. The point I believe she was trying to make is, yes, we can go and study, get these certifications, but that alone will not be enough. And this is mainly to the young people in the room, because that alone won't be enough. How do we continuously skill ourselves, train ourselves? We're so privileged to live in an era where we have access to many of these things digitally, to the internet that many generations before us didn't have. How do we make the most of it for those that already have that access? The third point around what we do differently is rethinking labor and social policies. And here, It will mean a change, a shift in our regulatory frameworks that protect people while also enabling innovation, recognizing all of these disruptions that are happening in the job market. Fourth point, which comes back to the theme, to many of the things that kept coming back in the panel, which is around making the private sector the engine for growth, job growth. And I believe it was the minister or the mayor who said earlier, government cannot employ the majority. What government will do best is to create the conditions for private sector to thrive, reducing the red tape where it must be reduced, getting feedback from private sector on what is needed to create these jobs and also contribute, simplifying business registration, lowering the barriers to entry for startups, and investing in SME financing. But also with a very specific target on what are the industries where we can create job-rich opportunities. And so these are the kind of questions we must ask ourselves. It's not a one-off conversation, it's not a one-off reflection, it's something that has to be at the core of everything that we do. And most importantly, how do we, coming back to the point I raised earlier around not leaving this to just the education sector to figure out the skills that we need for the future, but also thinking about the role that the private sector can have in investing in training and training the labor force that we have so that they're up to par with the disruptions that are meant to trigger the different sectors you're in. And then the fifth point is around building institutions that deliver. And here I want to emphasize something around data-informed institutions, building labor market observatories, but also creating the right platforms that allow for this public-private dialogue and having youth at the heart of this engagement as we shape the future of work. And so these are things, borrowing from everything that we've had, this morning, things that we take away where we're not just celebrating what we've achieved, but also reflecting on the challenges that have continued to hinder the progress. So if we act with urgency and unity as partners, job creation must not just remain our shared priority, but also really thinking about growth, about a future that is secure and inclusive. So as we move forward, let's move forward stronger in partnership, clearer in purpose, and bolder in action. I thank you very much. Umunsi Mwiza Umudimu.